Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this first time experience at Groundswell. It's never been done before. This fast-moving audience interactive session. 5 people presenting on a soapbox with you guys, question and answer, and then moving on to the next one. I'm your host, your compere, your moderator, Rob Yorke, independent environment dialogue broker, call me whatever you want to. But I am pretty damn strict because we want to hear from everybody, and that means you guys, the audience, as well. So I'm really delighted that we have with us, in no particular order, Jonathan, Lucy, Ottilie, and Michael, and Joe, and Annabel, who are going to be talking about tea, compost, farmer income, disease control, and horses, in no particular order. So, from that moment, I just want to read the house rules. So the guys doing the presentation all understand that it's 8 minutes that they have. And then it's 3 minutes Q&A, or of course they can talk for slightly shorter. Then we have more time for Q&A. So that depends on you, the audience, how you react. We have one roving mic, but the house rules are no mission statements. Keep it pithy, keep it pertinent, keep it to the point of what the person's just been talking about. And we want to harvest the room for those opinions and allow the people to respond. Or if we have time, other people in the room might want to respond. So this is what this is about. It's an interactive event. Time will fly. This is a recorded event, so if you miss something, you can come back to it later. So I think to start with, we're going to start, let me go with Jonathan, who's going to talk about disease control.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. If you take no other message from what I'm about to say, I hope you'll get the message that we need to be open-minded about genetic methods to reduce the environmental impact of agriculture. We all want to reduce the environmental impact of agriculture without destroying the planet and enabling there to be enough food. And it requires genetics as well as methodological crop improvement practices. So we need to make yield, of course, and we also need to protect it. And genetics is key. If you produce, to produce a ton of grain requires 1,000 tons of water. So if you lose 10% of that yield, you've thrown away 100 tons of water. So surely we can agree it's better to protect crops with genetics, with biology, rather than with chemistry. So there's various reasons for this, one of which is that the fungicides that are applied to control disease actually have a deleterious effect on the mycorrhizal fungi that roots depend on for healthy mineral nutrition of the plant. And another is that by selecting for fungal resistance to the compounds that we're using, such as azoles, to protect crops from disease, we're actually selecting for disease resistance genes that can get into the fungi that cause human diseases, such as Aspergillus fumigatus of the lung, and making it more difficult to control those diseases. So it's better to control disease with genetics rather than chemistry. So how do plants resist disease? The thing is that plants have got lots of these things called immune receptors, hundreds to thousands of immune receptors. These enable them to detect when a pathogen shows up and activate defense. So we've got, let's say plant 1 has got a whole bunch of immune receptors, and plant 2 has got a whole bunch of immune receptors. And what you can do is to move the immune receptors from plant 1 to plant 2, and you enhance its capacity to perceive the world, to activate defense when pathogens show up. And this is a good thing. So here's a classical example of this from 25 years ago. Pepper carries a gene called BS2 for bacterial spot resistance. And if you don't have the BS2 gene in, you can see what happens to the plant on the right. It's toast. So colleagues in the US cloned the BS2 gene. It's one of these immune receptor encoding genes, and put it into a tomato. And guess what? If you've got the BS2 gene in your tomato, then your tomato is just fine. And if it hasn't, then it is also toast in response to this pathogen. So this actually doubles the yield in fields in Florida. So how do we do this? It involves a nature-based solution. It's a soil bacterium. So since it's a soil bacterium, it's obviously going to be beloved of the organic movement and the regen agriculturalists. It's called agrobacterium, and it delivers DNA to plants as part of its natural way of living and moving and having its being. So you can put genes in using this method. And we've been using this to control a very important disease of potato late blight. Potato late blight can convert a field like the one on the left to a field like the one on the right in a couple of weeks. And we've identified immune receptors from wild relatives of potato and put them into a couple of potato varieties, along with a couple of resistance genes to potato viruses, potato virus Y and potato leaf roll virus. And these give us complete resistance in the field. Now under the Precision Breeding Act, this also gives us resistance in tubers. Under the Precision Breeding Act, we can now, for the UK, take in a cisgenic way these 3 immune receptors from potato relatives, along with this potato virus Y resistance and potato leaf roll virus resistance, and make cisgenic virus and blight resistant Maris Piper and Charlotte and anything else that somebody puts in front of us. And these potatoes, actually, you'll be able to save these potatoes and grow them next year because they won't carry the virus load. And I hope you'll agree that this is a very good thing to do, and you will enthusiastically consume them when they come on the market in about 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, any questions, please? We've got the microphone positioned here, so there's one question there. Put your hands up for the next question so I can see where we're going to move to afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
Jonathan, Tom Allen Stevens, British On-Farm Innovation Network. Really, really interested in these potatoes. Love to bring them onto our farmers' farms. But you've successfully done blight-resistant potatoes and GM. Obviously, we can't use that technology, but can you do the same blight resistance with gene editing?
I've not seen convincing data that any of the simple loss of function mutations through CRISPR give you a useful level of blight resistance without any collateral damage. But this method that we're using is compatible with the Precision Breeding Act. So let me be clear. The newly passed Precision Breeding Act, basically it's technology agnostic. What it requires you to be able to be doing, is making changes in the potato that could have occurred with traditional plant breeding. So the genes that we're putting in are all genes that definitely can, or that we can plausibly argue have been bred in. And the only reason why the ones we've done before didn't fit this bill actually was that we used a tomato gene instead of a potato gene for the selectable marker. Now we've learned our lesson and corrected that, and so now everything that you see there from that green thing on the left, which is the selectable marker, to the 5 genes, are genes that could have been bred in.
Great, thank you. Any more questions? Any more hands coming up? Yes, there's a hand up there, please. Anyone else? Hand up there. We probably haven't got long, but keep going. Yes,
Hi.
please.
Every intervention has unexpected consequences. Please comment.
Good question.
Yes, but we need to think about the consequences of the lack of intervention as well as the consequences of intervention. No, but in the real world, you have to make judgments between least bad options. So if there's no such intervention as what I'm proposing here, then farmers will carry on spraying 15 times a year for late blight, emitting the CO2, putting chemicals on, wearing out their farm machinery, and this is the path to removing the need for that.
Okay. A quick question here. I think we're running out of time for questions, but maybe we can do it right at the end if you're still... Yes.
Seed companies can patent seeds if they're genetically modified. Can you comment on that?
The patenting issue, of course, it's hard to give a short answer to that, but basically we will create varieties that carry these traits that will be protected in the same way as any other variety. And in 30 years' time, it won't be protected as a variety.
Great, thanks very much. Just raise your hands in 5 years' time. Who's going to be buying these potatoes in the supermarket? Okay, what we're talking roughly, I don't know, 1/3. No, we're not talking a bit less now. Thank you very much indeed, Jonathan, for that. Great. Okay, moving on to the next. Ottilie, sorry, I called you the wrong name earlier. Lucy and Ottilie are both going to talk about tea. However, they're going to talk about it starting 8 minutes, starting from now.
Hello. Is this working? Yeah. Tea, soil and social. We're hoping to convince all of you to go home and plant some tea, ideally. Okay, so we really think that tea offers a great potential for farm diversification in the UK. Certainly in my own case, it's provided an ability to extend the farm income away from being seasonal, with traditionally soft fruit growers, into an income that can be year-round. it's something that I really do believe can be integrated into new and existing agroforestry systems. Tea is actually a product that comes from traditionally tropical forested areas, so it really does lend itself to agroforestry. And the UK is certainly in a good position. We drink enough of it to provide the conditions for growing sustainable tea. Ottilie is just going to talk a little bit more about the market.
Thanks, Lucy. So what we're actually talking about is Camellia sinensis. So all tea comes from this one plant. So it's where it's grown. That's what makes the difference. Terroir, or tiroir, as we sometimes call it, has a real impact on the flavour of the tea. But then what you do to it, so how you process it, whether it becomes black tea, green tea, white tea. Lucy is growing the most delicious, wonderful tea in Wales at Peterston Tea. What we're sort of looking at, when you look at it, tea in the global market, there are many, many uses. So you're using teas as sort of iced drinks, ready to drinks, culinary uses, inclusions for different products, cosmetics. But really, I think in the UK, what we're looking at is really good quality. So what Lucy is doing is she's producing a tiny amount of tea, and she is selling that at very high value. Anything that she is very, very selective in what she actually puts into the marketplace. Anything that she's not 100% happy with, she's turning into kombucha. So a diversification within that one product itself. These are just a few examples of people growing tea around the UK. So from top left, that's Pinky in Scotland, down to the bottom right, and these guys are in Jersey. So different climatic conditions, all giving really very varied results on the flavour and the taste of the tea.
I didn't pay her to say that. Camellia sinensis, it's a deep-rooting perennial. I'm sure you've probably heard a lot today on perennials and the sort of contribution that they can make to farming systems. It's also a good contributor of organic matter. Soil carbon sequestration, a tea plant averages, I believe it's 2.34 kilos a year in terms of sequestration. They quite deep rooting, fibrous roots about 45 centimetres depth. Taproot will go down 1.5 metres up to 3 metres. So they really are quite good for stabilising ground, reducing erosion. And obviously in themselves, they're an evergreen, very dense habit. So it's brilliant for all sorts of biodiversity, wildlife, birds, different insects. Moving on to social. Tea, obviously, natural properties. It has a relaxation, well-being properties within it. But in addition to that, as I've found on my own journey with tea, that it provides a really innovative way to promote social collaboration, either with other businesses or other social community groups. And I think it really does have a lot of potential to act as a therapeutic sort of benefit, both for farmers themselves, so that they can incorporate social elements into the farm, but also for mental health provision in the community. And a lot of things can be improved with a cup of tea. In this weather, probably iced tea is more appropriate.
Brilliant. A round of applause there. Thank you very much indeed, Ottilie and Lucy. Okay, I think we've got some time. We've got a question here, please.
What would be the ideal growing environment for the tea?
It really isn't actually that fussy. A lot of people think it needs to be quite acidic, but it will actually grow quite happily in pH of 6.5 or below, really. It's something we grow organically ourselves, quite regeneratively. So we use a lot of different composting methods to improve the soil, different cover crops alongside. But it's not actually that fussy. The main problem is like wind damage. So.
Okay, wind damage. Okay, there's a question over there, please. Yes, in the middle, hand up there with the hat on. Any more? Put your hands up for the next. Okay, right. We've got some. Suddenly, 4 hands went up in one go. So tea is topical. Yes.
Hiya. Apart from the climatic potential pressures, are there any disease or pest burdens in the UK that present issues to growing tea?
Not really. The biggest, well, we have some black aphids, but it's not actually a problem. We're finding that it's balanced out with ladybird populations, even in this year, which has been really bad for aphids. It's not a problem for us. The biggest issue, I think, countrywide is actually vole damage. But again, if the sort of area is managed well, it's mown at the right times of year, it will actually reduce the impact of voles on the plants over winter.
Very interesting. Vole-friendly tea or unfriendly tea.
I'm just curious, why during the 19th century, when there was such an expansion of tea growing areas, did nobody start this in Britain?
I think because we had large areas to grow tea in tropical regions. But I would certainly say with climate change, you're seeing a mushrooming of tea producers in the UK. I think there are about 40 now, up to 40 people. More than that now.
Yes, a question over there, and then we've got two more, then I think we're probably out of time. Very quick questions, please, now. Sorry, suddenly hands going up. Go.
Is it a profitable crop?
In one sentence.
Yes, by diversifying as well. So by the model I've come up with is to sell premium and then to use any additional leaf by adding further value to that with the kombucha.
Thank you. Perfect. Yes, please.
I've seen a few tea estates in Africa, Sri Lanka. It's incredibly labour intensive. How would you get around that? Labour's not cheap here.
Okay. One more question after this.
It's long hours. It is labour intensive. This is why UK tea will not be able to compete in terms of price with incoming imported tea. But throughout Europe, there are sort of rapidly increasing number of growers, and this is where the market is open to specialty teas. It's a very good price point that we can reach.
Thank you very much for that. One more question, I think, and then we're out of time.
Okay. You're saying about using it in conjunction with agroforestry. Knowing that I know it's sunny now, but we're not as sunny as traditional tea growing areas. If we've got it sort of next to a wood or into trees, how would you do that productively?
In half a sentence.
In half a sentence.
No, it's a good question.
And well, we actually I incorporate the tea with agroforestry on the farm, growing alongside fruit, apples, all sorts of different fruit crops. It's more open orchard style, but I've also got more of a food forest area, so different canopy heights, all different species of tree. So the tea's more like an understory canopy then.
Okay, so multi-layer. Thank you very much indeed, Ottilie and Lucy, and thank you very much for the questions as well. Moving straight on, we are going to talk or hear from Michael about compost in all its forms. Are we ready, timer? 8 minutes starting more or less now.
Cool. So I'm here to talk to you about this model that I've developed that I call Compost Club because it's a compost club, and it's we're basically taking other people's waste. Oh, that clicker's not working. Yay, cool, look, there's me. So what is Compost Club? So I collect, basically it's like a kind of subscription service. So people pay me. We've got this little second-hand electric van, so I whiz about Brighton and Hove and Lewis, collecting food waste from members. I use these 30-litre kind of upcycled, salvaged buckets to do that, and we utilise a thing called bokashi. So that ferments organic matter, so we can collect cooked food, meat, dairy, everything from people. We do that with domestic members as well as some commercial partners. Domestically, we come out every 3 weeks. We basically make it super convenient for people, so it's accessible for everyone. So I just leave them a clean bucket, collect that bucket, bring it back to site, and then we process it. Important to the thing is we don't use any fossil fuels on site. We don't even have mains water. We just harvest rainwater. So our only kind of grid dependence at the moment is the van, but I'm hoping I used to be an electrician before I became a soil nerd, so set up like a kind of solar panel array for that as well, and then we're just completely, self-propelled, if you like. One of the things we do after the fermentation is we use these Rydan in-vessel composters, as well as some others, but that's really super effective. So we get hot composting going on in there. If you read any of this stuff, it's super quick, kills weed seeds if they're in there, any pathogens, and means we can get through quite a volume. They're like a constant throughput, which is really cool. We then mature that in these Johnson Sioux bioreactors, and people have been talking about those all day today. Really cool passive aeration. It means that we don't have to turn the compost, which means we can build a really healthy sort of fungal biomass. And we had, I think I've got a report actually somewhere. I'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, we're producing fungal dominant compost, which is really cool. And then we also do some stuff in windrows as well, reasonably small scale, because I'm just turning it at the moment by hand. So it's more there for demonstration, and we do stuff on site so people come and have a look round. Someone I fondly refer to back as described it as like composting Disneyland, which is super cool. And then when members get some of the compost back as part of the service, and then people buy it. So often in these little 5-litre bags, in Hessian bags. So again, we're not using any plastics, and we can sort of ship it anywhere in the UK. Some like growers buy like ton bags of it. And we just sort of drop that off and reuse it or leave it with them if they're going to keep it. I'll try and be super brief. I can get lost on biology. So the compost we're making is this one that's on the right here, all this life, all these humates. If it were a video, this would be going nuts, bumbling around, nematodes, worms. Well, nematodes are the microscopic worms, protozoa, basically all the things that eat the things, pooping out plant-available nutrients just naturally, whereas the one on the left is like green waste stuff, and you see there's not much going on, a bit of bacteria, some little aggregates of sand, and that's kind of it. This was a report we had done independently. Someone came onto site and took a sample. It kind of blew my mind, the amount, particularly like the protozoa are the guys that eat the bacteria and the fungi and start to naturally nutrient cycle. We had like crazy amounts. So the third column is like the requirements to be biologically complete, if you've done any sort of soil food web work with Elaine, and the fourth column is like the percentage more than that we're achieving. You're pretty low tech. It's like human scale. Essentially, it's harnessing these microbes to do the composting, and therefore resulting in a compost packed full of them that you can use like a ton per acre or something. So that, yeah, briefly, like the soil is like this biome. So like in our guts, plants are releasing exudates, working with that in the soil, creating a similar thing around their roots, taking the metabolites basically from those microbes. And, we talk about things like carbon being an issue. It's just kind of in the wrong place. So plants producing all these exudates, and then the bodies of these microbes, basically they're like carbon structures, right? So that's like the more microbes there are, the more carbon is in the ground, particularly fungi. And then there's just a little graphic of some of the kind of key players that within that we sort of identify with microscopes and look for what we've got in order to produce those reports. Really cool impacts of using biology is that you get natural pest and disease resistance from healthy plants. You get structure being built by these bacteria and fungi creating aggregates. The more water they can bring into the soil, hold on to that. You get it's like a capillary action where that goes and then draws in oxygen, and they can just sort of build soil profile, and obviously carbon sequestration, as I've mentioned. And the reason I'm kind of telling you all this is I've got this kind of model that I would like to, I came into it through having this little market garden, had to give that up just to kind of dedicate to this. But I'd love to kind of partner with growers and basically almost like add this model as a kind of bolt-on to, a CSA or a market garden or a farm or whatever, either, create a green job, basically. Someone can go and people will pay you to take their food waste, you bring it onto site, compost it in these ways that I can teach you, or you can just kind of figure out yourselves, and make this kind of microbially active compost that instead of kind of, I don't make enough, so I keep running out, and it's fairly expensive. So if you want to kind of make it yourselves, like people pay you to bring the fertility to your land, essentially. So that's my kind of pitch. And if you want to get in touch, this is where you can do it, or just come and chat to me, or ask me a question now.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Michael, for that. Good. We've got some hands coming up already. Yes, please, here.
Are there issues with waste license handling, that kind of thing?
So for the collections, I've got like, because obviously we're charging, so I've got like an upper tier waste carrier's license. But as long as you operate within, depending on what inputs you're taking from people, there are like limits. So I operate under these exemptions. So there are just limits to the volumes that you can do. it varies depending on what you're taking and if you're using the compost on site versus if it's going elsewhere and you're selling it. So obviously I sell it, but it could be you're using it on site. And there's different ones as well. So there's anaerobic composting, there's aerobic composting, there's vermicomposting with worms, and you get different amounts for different each exemption. So I kind of utilize all of them.
Great, thank you. Next question.
Probably pretty much similar question is, you talk about scalability, because I think great little project, but how do you scale it with environmental permits, animal byproduct regulations, waste carriers licensing, planning permissions? What do you see as the barriers for scaling, and how do we overcome that?
Because I like, and you don't have to do it this way, but because I love the fossil fuel free nature of it, the human scale of it, it's almost got these self-imposed limits by the regulations that you can operate under and the nature that it's carried out by people and microbes. So rather than scaling it up to become something bigger, it's like you just have lots of them, create lots of jobs. So my vision is what I call like nutrient cycling towns and cities, where we pop these things up everywhere, create jobs for people everywhere, engaging in their communities, doing good work, regenerating the soil, the surplus of which with all that compost can then go out to all the guys farming and, using that instead of all the chemicals and whatnot, or at least reducing those.
Great, thank you very much. Any more questions there on composting at all? There's one more question there. Then I think that's the last question. Are we on time? We've got a few more. You're saying? Okay.
Do you struggle with contamination? Do you end up getting plastic wastes or things that won't break down when you collect?
Occasionally, but generally speaking, because it's like a paid-for service, the people that are willing to do it are pretty good. We have good dialogue with everybody. The only thing is like fruit stickers is a common one. We were having issues with like compostable packaging that isn't really. So we've just sort of a blanket statement. We don't take that stuff, except for a few exemptions that do actually work. So generally speaking, it's pretty good. And because we operate on the scale again that we're at, we kind of can go through everything. But it's all in like 30-litre buckets, so it's not this mammoth task to kind of check it. And because we're quite hands-on throughout the whole process, as I say, we do lots of different things, like one after the other. So it's choreographed little compost dance with it. So we kind of get things out as we go. And there's almost nothing contaminant-wise in the end.
Brilliant. We've got one more question. Time to squeeze one in.
Thank you. Have you done any work with non-food waste products like bracken that might be taken off for heathland restoration?
Just because of the structure that we've got, our inputs are basically food waste, wood chips that tree surgeons come and drop off, and biochar as well. They all go in together in that in-vessel stage. So I haven't used other stuff. I mean, I have done like bits and pieces, but in terms of for this model, it's just been the food waste.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Michael, for that, and thank you for your questions. Okay, moving straight on. Joe is going to come to talk to us about basic income for farmers.
So I want to live in a world where organic and regenerative produce is the standard. I want to live in a world where those who want a career in food and farming but might not have the means to do so can. I want to live in a world where farmers have better bargaining power against supermarkets' precarious agreements. I want to live in a world where there's an abundance of diversity of crops and diversity of people who grow them. But how do we get there? And what steps do we need to take to that new world? So over the course of the next 7 minutes, I want you to reimagine a world where all farmers and agricultural workers in the UK are financially secure. And in turn, their communities can access local regenerative produce with ease. So how did we get here? I, 4 years ago, had no contact with farming. I was working a desk job. And through the pandemic, I kind of had this awakening that our food system globally was very fragile. So I quit my job. I moved up north and trained in horticulture with Newton Rigg, and I did a farm start training program at the plot. After 18 months of no income and lots of training, I eventually got paid work. And it was really difficult because I saw how hard my bosses and trainers were working, but how little they earned. And I couldn't see myself in that career. It didn't look like a human sustainable career for me. So I just want to caveat that I am not an expert in farming and I'm not an expert in basic income, but I just thought of something that would have been relevant to help me get into a career in food and farming, and I thought it might be relevant for others. Just to see if it is relevant for others in the room, I want to invite you to do a show of hands activity with me. If you don't feel comfortable raising your hand for this, that's totally fine. Just imagine that you're raising it. So I'm going to read out a statement, and if you agree with it, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. So Over the course of my career in food and farming, I have worked for no income. So raise your hand if that's true. And keep that hand raised if that was for 1 year or more. Keep that hand raised if that was for 5 years or more. Keep that hand raised if that was for 10 years or more. Okay, yeah, it's really important that we recognize that because farming is such an essential skill and it's not socially or financially recognized as such. And just to add some statistics to that, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation set a number which is the minimum income standard for an individual in the UK to earn annually to live a life of dignity. And in 2023, they set that as £29,500. DEFRA did a study in 2022 on farming families' incomes, and they found that the whole farming family's income, including off-farm income, was £17,800. So that's a staggering £20,700 under that minimum income threshold per individual in the farming household. So it's clear we have a crisis in income and we need to stabilise it. Farmers play an essential role, like I've said, but they're not recognised. And how do we apply that to a real-world example? So councillors in England, people who play an essential role in the local politics of a community, they get a basic allowance from the government of £15,000 a year. Why can't farmers have the same? But when we talk about basic income, what do we actually mean? So what I'm proposing is a regular, unconditional cash payment directly made to farmers and agricultural workers. And unlike CAP or ELMS, it's not attached to land, it's not attached to an outcome or an action, it's purely for the person who's contributing to food production. It would be on top of any farming income and on top of any agri-environment scheme, which are currently set to leave farmers out of pocket still. In an ideal world, it would be a payment that underpins something like an environmental land management scheme. Farmers carry so much risk. I don't know many other professions that could fail because of a record-breaking wet winter or an outbreak of bird flu or TB. There's so much out of the farmers' hands and we need to stabilise that. We've consulted with over 280 agricultural workers in the UK and 97% of them wanted a basic income for farmers. We launched a paper on the 4th of April this year and it made a bit of a splash in the press. It was amazing, but also the press took an angle that we weren't too keen on, but that's something separate. So we chatted to over 280 people through Zooms and in-person conferences and online surveys. And those conversations were just so rich that we felt we needed to do something about it. But what are our next steps? So we're looking for funding I've been working for free on this for nearly 2 years now, and I'd really like some funding to work with policymakers to design really robust policy for the devolved nations with this. And, we'd like to do a pilot. We want to test it. It's a theory that a basic income would improve the health and well-being of food producers. It could enable new entrants. It could increase local food supplies. But we need to test it. And a place to look would be Ireland right now. They're doing a basic income for artists scheme where 2,000 artists received €1,300 a month for 3 years. And the results have just come out. And it's so positive in enriching the culture around the arts and the mental well-being of the artists that they want to roll out the scheme further and include more people. We want to do the same for farmers. At ORFC, we asked participants what a policy like this made them feel. And you can see on the screen some of the quotes that came out. I would be much less grumpy, but more importantly, it would allow me to carry on farming. We also asked for words and feelings around this policy, and they were hopeful, creative, positive, sane, relieved. If there's any other growers in the room, you might know that feeling when you put out a crop and you think, oh no, it's not going to survive. And you go back and you check it, and it's not only surviving, but it's thriving. Imagine if we applied that feeling to all agricultural workers and they weren't just stuck in the state of survival, but they were thriving. I know that a basic income for farmers won't fix everything. There's deep cracks in the food system, but we have to start somewhere. To strengthen the food system, we need to strengthen the existence of our food producers first. And if we want food security, we need our farmers to be secure. A basic income for farmers could be a step towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe, for that. Okay, some hand up there, please. If you can all put your hand, or start putting your hands up after the. Okay, good.
Hi, great concept, but I do have a question. If farming is the only product producing industry where the supermarkets dictate how much the farmer gets paid for the product that's produced, surely if that could be turned around and the farmer can say, it has cost me this much to produce this product, therefore with this markup, this is what the supermarket pays, and then the end user just has to pay that. It's just a fact of life, the same as any other industry. Surely that would fix the problem.
Yeah, I believe that we should be paying farmers fairly for their food, but also as the climate crisis accelerates, so will the risk that farmers have to get crop out of the ground. So we need to stabilise them somehow separately.
A question here.
A French civil servant once said of the Common Agricultural Policy's second pillar, pour les agriculteurs et les friseurs, for the farmers and the hairdressers. So why stop with just the farmers?
It's a really good question, and everyone that we've engaged with in the agricultural field wants a basic income for everyone. They can see the benefits of consumers having a basic income, so they can start paying the true cost of food for regenerative produce.
Okay, next question there, and then over to the lady over there.
There's reasonable evidence that BPS led to higher land values and sort of lower productivity. What stops a basic income for farmers heading down that same route in the long run?
Yeah, really good question, and one that we want to explore further and get proper modelling around, because we wouldn't want to have any negative impacts from this thing that's just meant to underpin and support farmers.
A question at the back there coming up now.
Hi, so who regulates this and what are the rules? So there has to be rules for this sort of thing.
It's great. I mean, we're just a group of farmers coming up with this idea, wanting to explore it, so we don't have all the answers, but we want to get funding to then employ people who can help us get to those answers.
Question in the front here. Nikki's being kept very busy in the middle, just going back there. Thank you, Nikki, for this fleet-footed microphone work. Yes.
First of all, well done you for doing some for free for 2 years. I also run a project for free for a long time, and we are getting somewhere now. We're getting funding, but I tell you, you will run out of steam to keep going. And something like this, I'm all behind it, but you're going to face a lot of obstacles. First of all, are you thinking this is like a hardship fund that only some farmers would go? Because we're talking about an industry where there's some very well-off farmers, and there's some very poor farmers, and there's most of them are sort of in the middle. Yeah. Who's eligible? Mm-hmm. How do they apply? How do you overcome the fact that this is a very proud industry? Okay. Oh, I have so many questions.
That's it.
Yeah, that's great.
And we've got one more question.
Oh, I've just forgotten your question now. But who's eligible? We want all farmers, all agricultural workers, farm workers, people who are contributing to food production, even the rich ones, because as a basic income is sort of like the general idea of a basic income, the higher earners will pay it back into the tax system. So it's taxable income, so which will basically make sure that the people who are on the lowest incomes have the most impact.
Okay, we've got one more question coming up here.
Really great concept and really good for focusing people's attention on this. I think it's built on the last question. So would it be for all types of farming production methods? So for example, would it still go to intensive chicken farmers?
Yes. Ultimately, the answer is yes. We want all farmers to receive this payment, and we trust them with the money.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Should we just do a quick kind of raise of hands? Anyone want to yes for this? Basic income, let's just do a straw poll without any context. Okay, we've got about 1/4 there. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And Joe, thank you very much for that. A round of applause. Okay, coming up now for the final fence, I was going to say. And actually, Annabel's going to talk about horses. So I didn't mean to say fence, but we're coming up to this now. So over to you. I won't start the 8 minutes until about now.
Okay. Hello. So something completely different. Horses. So hands up if you think horses trash the land. Oh, I shouldn't have asked that, should I? So I'm going to try and convince you otherwise. So previously I've been an ecologist, and I've always grown up around horses, and I realised the horse world is crying out for help. We've all said this. We've all said they trash the land because most horse fields we see are soupy mud, bare ground, random weird plants coming up that horrify a lot of people. So very often I'm approached by families who own a farm and they have some horses on there. And half of the family wants to kick the horses out, half the family wants to keep horses. So hopefully this talk is going to be similar to what I say to some of them. So before I get right into it, I want to explain how horses would naturally be in the wild, because it's very different to how they'd be in captivity, domestic setting. So horses would naturally move across a home range. So this spans hundreds of miles, and they meet their needs travelling through this area. So they'd be grazing some areas in different times of the year, they'd be looking for water in different times of the year, and they'd be avoiding predators and flies. Compare this to domestic settings. They're living in a 12-foot box for most of the time. If they're lucky, they can get to go out in a field on their own, maybe with another horse. And naturally, horses would be in a herd all the time. So this results in some very weird behaviours. Horses begin chewing buildings and fences. They begin fighting over grass. If they've been starved at any point, even unintentionally, they'll eat at double the rate of the grass. So we can mimic that home range effect in a domestic setting. So what we can do is we can create either a surfaced or matted area that contains all the resources that they need, from water, hay, shelter, and enrichment like salt and wood to chew on. And then you can radiate pastures off of that. So instead of bringing horses in and out of a stable into a field, you can just open a gate and the horses will go out into the pasture. You graze it down to a certain length, then the horses bring themselves back in for water. You shut it, you can open a different pasture. So this means that all the work that you have to do is just done in that little area where they've got space to move around, but they do all their poo and eating and everything in there. So you've got one trough to deal with, one lot of hay to deal with, one lot of muck to deal with, and the stuff in the field is dealt with by the dung beetles, or if you don't have many, you can harrow it to help it along. So this way, you're taking all the hoof traffic into that surfaced area instead of it being in the field. So they're not hanging around in a gateway, they're not stuffing their faces all the time out in the field. They've got the option to come onto that sacrificed area. The benefit of this is you've got way less to do, and you can also control what goes in and out of the horses. So if you don't want any wormer chemicals going into your compost, you're in control of what's going on, so you can isolate those horses and make sure that they are not pooping that into, those chemicals into your normal fields. Additionally, money. So if you were to set up a yard on your land, if you can provide year-round outdoor time for horses, many horse owners will pay extra for that. Some horse owners are willing to pay upwards of £600 per horse per month. If you've got 10 horses, that's £6,000 a month extra all year round, no matter what. They don't have to be messy or difficult. If you set them up like this, and there's a couple of other ways as well, but this is the main one. If you set them up like this, then you can regenerate your pastures with using natural methods. You can also cross-graze with other species to help with parasite control and boost diversity. And you can promote natural behaviour, which has a positive impact on the land. So, dare I ask again, who thinks horses always trash the land? Put your hands up. Yay, less. Okay, any questions?
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for that, Annabel. A quick gallop through. Okay, we've got some questions. Yes, please, here.
Hello. I think it's brilliant that you're actually talking about this, because we keep horses at home and we've been barefoot and bitless for a long time, very natural based keeping of the horses and the children, they're a bit feral. And it works brilliantly, 100%, absolutely love what you're saying, apart from by the time you get to January. So from January to April, we're pretty screwed, and we have to put them back into a stable and just with turnout during the day, try and keep it as natural as possible. How can we get over that, the hunger gap, where nothing's growing, there's too much rain, everything's just knackered?
So some people find the more that they do this, the longer they do this, the more grass they have year on year. Alternatively, if you're always struggling with it, you can set up a track system. So it's like a couple of horses wide track that encourages movement, and you put ad lib hay around. Ideally, this can be surfaced. You can use mud mats as well, just to help it along. And you can be a bit creative and use other areas that aren't necessarily fields. You can use yards, you can use concrete areas and just allow them to carry on moving around and have ad lib hay to move between the hay, just to have that outdoor experience.
Any more questions? Yes, a hand up there, please. Any more? And then there's one more over there. And then I'm going to ask all of you to come up to sit and we'll wrap it up. So we've got some more questions for you, Annabel.
Do you give how much rest period do you give each cell, and do you advise your clients? Because obviously, the longer the rest period, the more the grass will recover.
Yes.
And diversity and the swards.
Yes. So there's a few different options you can go down with it. Some people like to graze between certain heights, so they use a sward stick, and they say 20 centimetres, they'll start grazing it again, and they'll stop at 6 centimetres, say. But you can do it to however you like on your land. And then you just only graze it when the grass is that height. And the beauty of this system is that if you don't have any grass that height and you need to rest it for longer, you can use that resting area, the loafing area, to protect your grass. So you don't have to graze it all the time, so it never gets overgrazed. And then in terms of diversity, so usually horse pasture isn't very fertilised anyway, it's just the muck that goes back in. So this promotes a lot of biodiversity. Horses have also been found to promote a lot of biodiversity compared to some of the other animals. And also you can use hay from sites that are very biodiverse and use that to mulch over bare ground, and that will do well.
Perfect. One more question, then I think we're going to start to wrap up, and if you can all come up one, just do. Yes, please.
Yes, you mentioned cross-grazing. I'd like to know what your experience is with that and with which species.
Yes, so horses and sheep go together brilliantly. They help with parasite control, and also the sheep eat some of the things that horses aren't bothered with. Horses and sheep graze very differently, so they'll favour different plants. So that's one that I definitely encourage. But I've seen people cross-graze with alpacas, cows, all sorts. Go experiment, I'd say.
Great. Thank you very much, Annabel, for that. Guys, if you all just come up, I'm just going to acknowledge you. Just going to say thank you very much for our panelists. Jonathan for talking about protecting plants with genetics, not chemicals. Thanking also, there we are. I haven't got enough chairs, so I'm going to move over here. Lucy and Ottilie talking about tea, the benefits of mixing it into the system, whether it's high level or low level, just drinking more tea generally. Michael talking about fungal dominant compost and harnessing the microbes. Joe talking about standardizing income in order to recognize the social power of workers, of farm workers who are unpaid. And finally, Annabel talking about cross-grazing with horses and naturalizing some of their grazing techniques for the benefit. So thank you very much to all of them, and thank you to you, the audience, for all your interaction and your great questions. Thank you to the timekeeper, my niece, and thank you, Nikki, for doing the microphone. Have a lovely night.